Good morning, beautiful people. It is Thursday, the 10th of April. Welcome to TDA, the day after, your favorite news platform and the home of popular culture as defined by you guys, the culture. And of course, like we are every blessed day, we're hosted by the very best. Firstly, though, apologies, guys, for the tardiness, for the lateness. We were having to sort out some technical issues, but we're here, man. And we've got a great show for you. We've got some amazing guests coming on the show as well. So, yeah, man, share the video, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. We're on the road to 10K subscribers. Brent, you in the building?
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Like Emmanuel said, I apologize profusely. I know y'all don't like when it is that we don't start, when it is we say we're going to start. So I hold my hand up and I use my other hand to hold Emmanuel's hand up too. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's difficult. All right. Let me do a quick roll call. Good morning, Energy, 9 Ether, Mr. Ashlows. Energy, do you live in London? Please let me know. Please let me know. 9 Ether, Mr. Ashlows, Akuya, Amy Snow Globe, Bimmy, Davina, Gin and Gist, Susanna, Els 24, Lou, DCF Mooks, Catherine, Ed, Bex, Dr. Amani, Priz, Ghana Greatness, Mobizi, Antonia Hansen, Nams, Corporate Prince. Ooh, what happened?
2.
So it just happened.
God damn it.
What the hell?
What, to the stream?
I don't know if it's a stream, but I hope nothing happened to the stream just now. Something just happened technically, and I hope nothing happened. Anyway, Natty, Ness Express, TJ, and Rolly. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right. What have we got today? Should we go straight into the headlines?
Let's go straight into it.
All right.
I don't know what's happening. All right, beautiful people. So our first set of headlines. Keir Starmer is looking to unveil some plans, man. He's got some new plans for our neighborhoods. Basically, police officers on foot will patrol every busy neighborhood at peak times as part of a set of community-focused measures to be unveiled by our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. In an announcement billed as a return to an era of Bobbies on the Beat, the Prime Minister will also confirm that every neighbourhood in England and Wales will be given a named and contactable police officer. The plans are expected to be in place by July and follow the government's promises to restore confidence in community policing. Starmer will say that the visible policing has fallen dramatically over the past decade and will reiterate plans to put 13,000 more officers into neighbourhood policing roles by 2029. Officials said that every neighbourhood in England and Wales will have dedicated teams on the beat with guaranteed police patrols at peak times, such as Friday and Saturday nights. The model announced by Starmer is inspired by an initiative that was launched 2 years ago by the Greater Manchester Police, when the force had said helped reduce burglary by a third, vehicle crime by a quarter, and led to the conviction of about 100 shoplifters a week. Next headline, and the Bank of England has warned that Donald Trump's trade war leaves the world more exposed to a financial and economic crisis. A steep rise in global tariffs beginning at 5 a.m. on Wednesday had contributed to a material increase in the risks to global growth. This according to the FPC, the bank's Financial Policy Committee. The same committee, they warned that the global risk environment has deteriorated and uncertainty has intensified. They also said that the probability of adverse events and the potential severity of their impact has also risen. The FBC, which is led by the bank's governor Andrew Bailey, added the risk of further sharp corrections remains high. Policymakers also warned that renewed market turmoil raised the risk of countries falling into a debt spiral, as governments struggle to escape a doom loop of low growth and rising borrowing costs. Next headline, trigger warning on this one, people. And the foster sister of a woman who was fatally stabbed at the Notting Hill Carnival has called for growing safety concerns about the iconic event to be addressed. Speaking outside the Old Bailey shortly after a man was convicted of murdering Cher Maximin, Tanya Jacobs said that the annual event in West London deserves protection support. Miss Maximin, she was 32, she was attending the Carnival's family day on the 25th of August last year when she was stabbed in the groin. She then later died, unfortunately, in hospital on the 31st of August. Following a trial at the Old Bailey, 20-year-old Shaquille Thibault was found guilty of her murder. On Notting Hill Carnival, Ms. Jacobs basically speaking about the same event. She said, "We must address growing safety concerns and engage in solution-focused conversations about its evolution. This iconic event deserves protection support by prioritizing public safety through collaborative planning and innovative strategies. We can honor and safeguard the joy and inclusivity that the carnival represents." Ms. Jacobs said that the loss of Miss Maximin, who was stabbed in front of her daughter, has caused immeasurable sadness. She described her foster sister as pure magic, radiant, loving, passionate, and kind. Our next headline, Donald Trump. This is obviously about the tariffs. So he has paused his so-called reciprocal tariffs on most of America's trading partners for 90 days, whilst increasing those in China to 125%. There's been fears of a global recession. The stock markets around the world had plummeted after Mr. Trump announced his Liberation Day tariffs on Wednesday, the 2nd of April. However, the S&P 500 stock index jumped 9.5% and global markets bounced back following Mr. Trump's announcement on Wednesday that the increased tariffs on nearly all trading partners will now be paused, right? So they're going to be paused for 90 days. In a post on his Truth social platform, Mr. Trump said the 90-day pause was for the more than 75 countries who had not retaliated against his tariffs in any way. He added that during this period, they will still have to pay a substantially lowered 10% tariff, which is effective immediately. It's lower than the 20% tariff that Mr. Trump had set for goods for the European Union, also lower than the 24% on imports from Japan and 25% on products from South Korea. The UK was already going to face a blanket 10% tariff under the new system, but Mr. Trump said the increased 125% tariff on imported goods from China was effective immediately. Next headline, and seven officers were taken to hospital following a major crash involving at least 4 police vehicles during a car chase. Images from the scene showed 4 marked police vehicles badly damaged, a car on its side, and debris scattered across the northbound carriageway. One of the police cars had its roof torn off. Northumbria police said that officers attempted to stop a dark grey BMW M Sport in the Wickham area of Gateshead at about 2 a.m. on Wednesday due to concerns about the manner in which it was being driven. The car drove off and it was later spotted in the Swalwell area. Specialist officers were sent to the area and got behind the car. By 2:27 a.m., the car and 5 police vehicles were involved in a collision near Derwenthaw Road junction. 7 officers were taken to hospital with what were described as non-life-threatening injuries. 2 occupants of the BMW were uninjured. A man in his 20s had been arrested on suspicion of causing serious injury by dangerous driving, and a woman, also aged in her 20s, has been arrested on suspicion of aiding and abetting dangerous driving. Both remain in police custody at this time. Next headline, and the alarming figures show that the UK has lost a high... See, this goes in to the topic that Big Up Joshua, suggested earlier this week. And this is basically about London falling out of the top 5 wealthiest cities in the world. Why? Because the millionaires are fleeing the capital. So these alarming figures show that the UK has lost a higher proportion of millionaires than anywhere in the world other than Moscow, which is a country facing severe international financial restrictions following the war in Ukraine, so that makes sense. But the figures revealed in the annual report on global wealth shows the capital has lost $11,300 millionaires over the past year. The number includes 18 centimillionaires, an individual with a net worth of 100 million or more, and also includes 2 billionaires. Conducted by financial advisors Henley and Partners, the study defines wealth as liquid investable assets. In basic terms, this refers to cash, bonds, and shares. Notably, this figure does not include the wealth in the form of property assets. So that's something to bear in mind. But I think it does indicate what's happening, man. So if they're gone, guys, where's the tax going to come from? So next headline, police have made several arrests after a large group of youths caused unrest at a fun fair on Blackheath Common. Officers were called to the scene on Tuesday afternoon following reports of a group of teenagers causing disorder. 6 people were arrested for various offences, including public order and possession of weapons. This is what the Met Police have said. And video footage posted on social media platform X shows dozens of officers attempting to disperse a crowd. A Section 60 order, which gives police greater powers to stop and search individuals, has been put in place in the area. A spokesperson for Met Police said on Tuesday, 8th of April, police were made aware of a large group of youths causing disorder on Blackheath Common. A Section 60 order and a dispersal order was put in place within the area. There were no reports of any injuries to members of the public. Next headline, and an elected London official has said a social media post that she responded to, which featured an AI image of the Mayor of London struggling in water, was meant as a light-hearted joke. Susan Hall, who's a Tory member on the London Assembly, shared a post on the 6th of April, a day after police confirmed that a 15-year-old boy had drowned in southeast London. Earlier in the same week, police launched a recovery operation after an 11-year-old girl got into difficulty in the River Thames. Hall said in a post which featured a fake image of the Labour mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan, in a large body of water, bore no relation to any other news story. The mayor has obviously been contacted by the BBC for a comment. And the original post on X featured the AI image and said, "What would you throw to save Khan?" And she basically reposted this with the words, "A ULEZ camera," right? She then said that she was responding to a joke on X, which is something that she often does, and had no relation to any of the other stories about those people who sadly drowned. She said, "It was meant as a light-hearted joke, as many of my tweets are, and certainly not intended to be taken seriously." And our last headline, trigger warning on this, people. Big trigger warning. There's been a death toll in the Dominican Republic, and it's climbing to 98, man, after a nightclub roof collapsed. And since the collapse of the roof at the Jet Set nightclub in Santo Domingo in the early hours of Tuesday, the death toll has climbed steadily. The popular club, which has operated for 50 years, was hosting a merengue concert attended by politicians and athletes when the roof of the one-story building caved in and fell onto the busy dance floor. 98 people have now been confirmed dead, amongst them popular Dominican singer and star Ruby Perez, who was performing on stage during the incident. Around 160 people were injured. While rescue crews were still searching for survivors in the rubble, crowds anxiously gathered at the venue to hear news from missing family members. Many people were also waiting at the Institute of Forensic Science to identify bodies. The Dominican authorities have not yet commented on the incident, although an investigation into the causes of the roof collapse is expected. Sad news, man. But that's it for our headlines, people. Time to pay them bills. I see we have a comment on the screen. Maggie says, would be great to have a full breakdown of the tariffs and the global impact. Okay. I guess we're going to do it, man. If you guys are interested, 100%. But yeah, let's go into our topic of the day. All right, people. So our topic of the day, like we hinted yesterday, this is going to be about the prosperity gospel preaching and whatnot, and what makes certain factors better predictors of those who are going to pretty much adhere to this particular prosperity gospel.
Invite somebody or some people to get onto the.
Cool. So people also, I definitely want people to call up here, join the Discord if you haven't already, sign up and whatnot, but jump in the chat. I want you guys to dialogue with me, because I feel like, even though we're not going to spend too much time on this, because we've got some guests coming soon, this is fascinating to me. I do want to kind of read out the results quickly of some of these factors so we can get straight to the point. But there are a number of factors that were basically put on the table and looked at and basically ranked to basically find out what would be the strongest predictor. And amongst them was being black, your church attendance, whether you're a Democrat or not, if you're male or female, your age, your income, and your education. So, cut to the chase, the strongest predictor by far, bear this in mind, guys, by far, was if you was black, more adherence to the prosperity gospel. And I want to know why. I want to know why it is that someone can basically just say, okay, cool, there's a greater chance of you adhering to this stuff. And again, I'm not here to say whether the prosperity gospel is good or bad. That's up to whoever in it. But why is it that being black, we're more susceptible to taking on that belief system? Why is it that our blackness is something that is even considered in this sort of thing? Especially when you look at the history of prosperity gospel preaching. To me, from obviously, again, you guys obviously probably better placed to speak about the modern televangelists and things like nature. I have no idea about these guys, right? But back in the day, to me, the most known prosperity gospel preachers were white people. Kenneth Hagin, Kenneth Copeland, Andrew Womack. Like, these people were white. Joel Osteen. These are all white people. Of course, you got the Creflo Dollars of the world who came afterwards. But the first wave, to me, were white people. You know what I'm saying? Like, and don't get me wrong, obviously, I believe their audiences, their congregation, pardon me, were predominantly white. But what made it, what made black pastors like gravitate to that sort of teaching, and what made us as a people say, you know what, this is for us? Do you get what I'm saying? So again, people, call up, please, and dialogue with me, man. Second biggest predictor was church attendance, by the way. So if you went to church more often, there's obviously a greater chance that you would basically adhere to this prosperity gospel. Third was being a Democrat. Being a Democrat. Apparently that had a moderate positive effect on whether you adhere to prosperity gospel. And being a male as well, also your age, those were small positive effects. And income had a very small positive effect. Less than age, by the way. And of course, education. So just bear these things in mind. So essentially, the more educated you are, the less likely you are to adhere to the prosperity gospel. Imagine that. The more educated you are. Is that also something that we can even, is there a correlation there as well? That education and our blackness isn't necessarily tied together, or at least historically hasn't been the case? Are very educated black people susceptible to this? From the looks of it, probably not. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is going on? What is going on? I want to see what you guys are even talking about in the chat as well. Just to see, like, what is it that makes this something that really gravitates to our people? Mark says in the chat, the UK and the US church culture is so different, so this needs to be made more specific. Well, to be fair, I definitely hear what you're saying, but don't you feel like prosperity preachers are basically here in the UK too? KICC, Winners Chapel, what's the other one? I can't remember the other one. Adeboye's Church. I can't remember. Somebody told me in the chat. But like, these are some of the biggest churches. You know what I'm saying? And as far as I'm aware, they basically have the prosperity gospel like fully into the teaching. But for those who don't know what the prosperity gospel, let me give you a definition, so that we can actually get into this and actually tackle this properly. Yeah. So the prosperity gospel is a gospel teaching that's strongly affiliated with Pentecostalism, right? And it's a form of Christian teaching that emphasizes God's will for the prosperity of all believers to be attained through faith, through devotion, tithing, and positive confessions, right? I'm going to say that again. So it's a form of Christian teaching that emphasizes God's will for the prosperity of all believers to be attained through faith, through devotion, through tithing, and positive confessions. Some people basically say this is tied to the New Thought movement, which was basically something that came into America in the early 20th century, late 19th century, I believe, but manifests into prosperity gospel in the early 20th century. And they basically emphasized a causal relationship between your thoughts and your experiences, right? And the whole manifesting certain things. So I'm not too sure if you guys know about people like Reverend Ike, who came, to be fair, like the late 20th century, but also you have people like Sweet Daddy Grace, right? From the early 19th century. And people kind of tie all of these things in. So granted, these people, well, Sweet Daddy Grace, I believe, was from Cape Verde, right? So one could say he was black. Reverend Ike, obviously black man. I believe he was from New York. But in between all of that, the people that really pushed it, the whole televangelist stuff, yeah, came through, again, from my understanding, from a lot of white people. Is there somebody in chat? Hello? Good morning.
Yeah, me. Yeah, Black Rob. Morning.
Yes, Black Rob. How you doing, man?
I'm good, thanks.
What's your thoughts on this, man? Because obviously, for those who don't know, I mentioned this yesterday. This basically came from a post that Black Rob put up, right? Where he posted the stats showing the factors that really speak to people's adherence to prosperity gospel. So yeah, Black Rob, what's your thoughts?
I think you mentioned that it was like very relevant in the Pentecostal community, and I think that's what it is. I think black people in general were more susceptible to emotional manipulation. So, and the Pentecostal church is all about charisma and emotions a lot of time. That's why the way that they express their Christianity is a lot of crying, lots of falling on the floor, lots of that type of stuff. And then if you have a charismatic leader, it goes hand in hand. And in probably contrast to like maybe more the Reformed churches where they're more about theology, a bit more dry in their praise and worship, but maybe more biblically sound in their doctrine. But it's not as exciting or interesting in terms of the entertainment factor of it. And I think that's the thing that plagues the black community the most, whether you're Christian or outside of faith, even how we choose our politics. We lead with our emotions, and if you can tug on our heartstrings, then the information being presented doesn't have to necessarily be correct or beneficial to you. It just has to make you feel good, and then they'll part with their money, and then they'll choose their leaders. I've seen it firsthand where the church that I grew up in, the pastor passed away, and there was like the succession plan. There was two people they could choose from, and there was one guy that was charismatic, but I could just tell. Well, this is my discernment. I feel like he wanted it for the wrong reasons, but he had the silver tongue. And then the other guy was a bit more bland, a bit more studious, a bit more nerdy, a bit more dry, but he was more biblically sound. And I can guess who they chose.
Blackwell, 1 second, yeah? 1 second. 1 second. So Black Phobia, you still there?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Quick thing here. So I hear what you're saying about the preaching and the I guess the style and certain things that's put into into the actual gospel, yeah. But the actual element of prosperity, though, why is that something that I feel we gravitate to more than white people?
Because it speaks to the condition of the heart. Like people want, like even Kanye West, he said that he left the church because he kept praying and he didn't get what he wanted. So he was like, "Oh, is this real?" And if your foundation is set on like, if you enter Christianity thinking that it's going to be like a black box to solve all your problems, then first of all, your theology is wrong from the basis, and it's easy. That's why people leave. Because like the Book of Job, all that stuff, you're gonna go through hardships. Your faith isn't about necessarily solving all your problems. It's about giving you the heart posture to go through these problems and still come out the other end still like all right. Do you know what I mean? So if it preaches that you're gonna come out of your situation, or whatever good or bad situation, and then you don't, then you feel that you've been lied to, and that's what a lot of these churches do sometimes, where they say, "Oh, we'll solve your problems. Just give some money, we'll solve it." And a lot of people are in bad situations. But it's so funny that data showed that being black was more of an indicator of if you subscribe to prosperity gospel than your economic situation. So that means that black people that are rich are even more still susceptible to the So then you can't just make an economics thing because they separated that out. And it just seems that there's something about the black culture that we love charismatic people. We love being told that there's like a pot of gold at the end of the tunnel, and we pick leaders that have the right. That they always say that the difference between like a pastor and a pimp, there's not much difference. It's just that because the same characteristics a lot of time in the black church that make one can make another, because they have that charisma, they know how to manipulate, but obviously that's not what you want, and you need someone that has the right intention sometimes, and sometimes that comes in different packages. It's not necessarily the charismatic person all the time. So
let me ask you this, yeah. With all that you're saying here, do you feel as though the pastors who are doing this know what they're doing? And
100%.
So you feel like they're actually exploiting the people?
Yep.
All of them?
The ones that are doing this.
Okay, so what's this?
All the ones that are preaching prosperity are exploiting it.
So watch this. Say you're somebody who goes to this church, right? You believe in it, whatever, and it's worked for you. Because I'm pretty sure like this has worked for many people. It has to have, yeah. Otherwise, it would be closed out, man. It just wouldn't be a good business model, right?
It works for who? The pastor or the congregation?
I think for people in the congregation too. I think so.
But it's like anything. A broken clock can be right twice a day. If you tell everyone in the congregation, "Oh, put some money and your problems will be solved." Someone's problems will be solved anyway because it would have been solved regardless if they put that money in.
Yes, exactly.
So it's not like necessarily saying that it worked for you. It's just that correlation doesn't mean causation.
But how does anybody point that to? Like, what would make somebody say, you know what, that's not because of Jesus. That's not because of the church. Because at the end of the day, if you can say to me, okay, yeah, your problems would have been solved anyway. I don't need to be in the church building. Do you get what I'm saying? But the fact that I'm there and I believe, surely I would think what I'm getting is a result of my belief, right?
Yeah, you can attach it to that. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is that if you go there and you're in trouble anyway, whether your problem gets solved or not, because you're going to church with the assumption that if I pray for something and it doesn't work out for me, then either I'm not a good Christian or this church they're liars. And that means the foundation of your doctrine is wrong because you're treating God like a genie. And he never said that he's going to solve all your problems. My church always says, the thing that you should pray for is God's will, because you don't know what his will is. His will for your life might be something else that you're opposite to what you're praying for, but it's probably better than what you want for yourself. So that it's better to pray for God's will than to pray for I want this, I want that, because the things you want are maybe the things that are going to cause your demise.
But the prosperity gospel, if I'm not mistaken, speaks to God's will being that we will have good health.
No, it speaks to prosperity. It speaks to, hey, if you're a good Christian, your life should the way that your life should reflect that in terms of you should be rich, you should have a big house, you should have this. So if you're a good Christian and those things aren't showing up in your life, then maybe you're not a good Christian. They're correlating the life the type of material life you have to how good of a Christian you are.
Is it that direct though, or is it just more so that you like? What's the scripture about that Paul talks about being content? I can't remember it now. I can't remember. Basically, Jesus God will supply all my needs, right?
Yeah.
If that's there and it's clear, like surely it's not necessarily about the big house and earning 250K a year. It's more so about, okay, I don't want for anything. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, my needs. That's different. Maslow's law hierarchy? Needs is different to wants. If God, you said he will provide all your needs, food, shelter, all that stuff. It didn't say the LDA. Do you know what I mean? Like,
all right. So all right. Back to what I was saying though. Yeah, you're basically saying everyone who basically is preaching the prosperity gospel is definitely basically, I don't know, they're motivated by other things. They're basically exploiting the people on purpose. Because in my head, I feel as though somebody could be in that congregation, grew up in that church, like they're progressing in life. Maybe I don't know what they're doing, right? And they're doing well. And then feels as though, you know what? I want to speak to the people and share my experiences. Can't it be a harmless thing like that where they're preaching to the people?
Do you know why? Maybe I could have given that excuse a while back, but now we're in the information age, and I've seen it firsthand. Like, you get what's that? Mike Todd.
Yeah,
he's been told by other pastors and other people, yo, you shouldn't be doing this, and he's very prideful now, and he won't take any advice from other people saying, yo, what you said wasn't sound. So he's like, oh, they're all haters, they're all hating on me because we got a big church. Yeah, I mean, so like he's been told, he's been told, and he won't change. So and there's so much spotlight. Every church has like a live stream now for the most part, all the big churches, so everyone can see what everyone else is doing. So someone's gonna tell you.
Man, it's sad, man. It really is sad, man. In my head, for some reason, I was thinking this might be one of those things that kind of tie back to slavery, right? In that it's one of those teachings that basically say wait on God to do something for you, right? And you being patient, God will arrive and He'll do certain things. And like we pretty much know your needs will be met and your wants too. So in slavery, I guess one may argue, especially if you're using certain scriptures about obey your masters and things of that nature, right? You don't need to be free. You can obey your master and have better conditions than somebody else who's more of a rebel, right, on the plantation. But your wants and things of that nature, it basically pacifies you, right? And tells you, listen, you don't need to do certain things. God is a just God. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I will come and redeem and sort things out for you. Don't you feel like there's, like, to me anyway, there's a link to that sort of ideology that's put into people's minds, right? About not doing anything, but just waiting on God to do something.
It never says don't do anything though.
No. I'm saying that more so. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it's more so the only thing you need to do is just believe. Do you know what I'm saying? Of course, with prosperity teaching, it came with the whole sowing the seed, innit? Right? But I feel like both of those things are kind of connected. Or am I kind of reaching? It also
says faith without works is dead. So you can't say, I believe, so everything will just fall in my lap. You still have to do stuff in it. So,
but doesn't that even add to it then? What would be the works in the prosperity gospel? Wouldn't that be the sowing of the seed?
No, the sowing of the seed should happen anyway. Like if you pay your tithe, whatever, but there shouldn't be a quid pro quo. You shouldn't go, hey, do this and this will happen. You know what I'm saying? It says give with a cheerful heart. You should be giving regardless. So you're in a bad position, you're in a good position. You think going up, things go, you give anyway, and you give it a cheerful heart. It shouldn't go. It's when they directly correlate. Hey, I need everyone to, like, remember what you said about Marvin's time. I need everyone to sow 1,000, and then this is gonna happen. That's as far as I'm concerned, that's witchcraft. Yeah, that's money ritual, isn't it? Man's giving you a straight outcome. Said, yo, this will happen if you do this with this money. You know what I'm saying? You haven't got the authority to say that.
Boy.
And then also, you said something about slavery. The thing is, prosperity preaching is big in America and it's also big in Africa. And I think it's for different reasons. And if slavery is a big proponent of that, why is it so big in Africa as well, where slavery wasn't like, obviously, the transatlantic slavery happened, but the people in Nigeria and other countries, they still have a lot of prosperity preaching and a lot of like shiesty pastors. So then it's like, what's the excuse there?
This is what I'm saying to you. So
no, we used to slavery.
Yeah. I mean, I could be wrong with that.
As a factor.
Yeah. But like, I'm just thinking, if that's the case, and people are still suffering, and you're sowing seeds, you're not getting anything back. Like, Is the brainwashing that deep where we just keep going back, and it's only, let me not say only, but it's mainly black people that this is happening to. It's insane to me.
It's not brainwashing. I don't get it's not brainwashing. It's you once you realize what the purpose of the faith, like you shouldn't be looking for rewards as from the it's supposed to be an internal piece that you get from it rather than external. And I know obviously you have a different you want your rewards here, innit?
Yeah.
But and some people will get that, but that shouldn't be the end goal, because if that's the end goal, then you'll feel hard done by if you don't get what you want out of it.
So in your mind, yeah, what should somebody like who goes to church regularly get from church? What should be like the thing they should prioritize? And
Salvation.
What would be a bonus? Okay, so for you, it's only salvation.
No, but it's church is community as well, because like we're two or more gathered at church, so it's so that you're supposed to be accountable to each other. So you're supposed to be like, you get people that go to church, but then like the way they behave, you're like, it's not conducive with what the book teaches. So it's like you should be able to evangelize through your life anyway. So if you see people that are like they're going through madness, but they're just cheerful, and you're just like, right, what's this person? What's their secret? Why? Look at all they're going through. I've been depressed if I was going through that. What's the? And then people gravitate towards you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
All right, appreciate you, Black Rob, man. Thank you for chiming in.
Cool. Cheers, man.
People, like I said, we've got amazing guests coming to the show, and they have arrived. And you guys will obviously remember one of them from the last community service. Good morning, Dr. Ron.
Good morning.
How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good. Still waking up, man. The journey to East London. I don't know if I'll ever get used to that. Yeah, but I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, man. Can't complain. Where are you traveling from?
North London, yeah.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you know North London well.
No,
Northern Line.
Okay.
So kind of take it to Tottenham Court Road and then Central Line. I haven't been in Central Line in years, bro. Years.
All right. Hello. By the way, do you go to church?
It's been a while. I'll be honest, it's been a while. So I was brought up, in the church. I would say I sporadically go with my mum when I can. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Is it like a mixed church?
Mixed in terms of?
In terms of like race and stuff? Or is it mainly black?
It's a Pentecostal. Yeah. How we Africans do. Yeah, no, it's predominantly black.
All right.
You might have the odd white person there, but no, predominantly black. Yeah.
Because I want to throw this to you, yeah. I'm not too sure if you heard any...
I found that conversation interesting still.
Okay. Yeah. Why do you think it is that black people, being black is the biggest predictor of adherence to the prosperity gospel? Being black, above income, above education.
It's fascinating that. Because I guess I was hearing bits of what the other guy was, I think what he was alluding to. But I guess he was talking about things like manipulation, and I found that quite fascinating, especially from a psychological perspective, because things like charisma, charm can actually be tools for manipulation.
Yes.
But also they cannot be. So I think when you add religion into the mix, I think it does complicate things. There were bits that I don't think I necessarily agreed with Black Robe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
I think it was quite dichotomous. It was either black or white. I don't think he was really seeing nuance in the grey. And I live in the grey. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
I live in the grey.
So for you, I don't know, like what for you is the main thing then? Why are black people susceptible to it?
It's a heavy question, bro.
Because even though you live in the grey, I'm assuming from what you're saying, there's so many other different things that factor into that.
Yeah.
But then above everything else, we're still seeing it from the stats, blackness is the main, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of, you know what I mean, screaming at you.
So again, because I came to the latter end of the conversation, I don't know if you were was the conversation talking about systemic racism? I don't know where you lot were going to.
No, it wasn't really. We I guess
I would be curious about how. I think there's something about generations, different generations of black people. So when I think about my mum and thinking about the fact that she came here when she was 30, so she has a lot of ideals and beliefs around religion generally that very much come from her being brought up in Africa.
Yeah.
And I think there are certain kind of narratives and stories and rules for living that we kind of call that, whereby as you're growing up, you think that, I don't know, a rule that you might have is, I need to help other people in order to be good. That might be a rule that's been kind of within the household, that's instilled in you as an individual. And then when you add religion to the mix, well, this is now a cultural and religious influence that's also telling you, you need to be good, you need to share, you need to share resource, money, blah, 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 in order to be a good person, in order to be a good Christian, actually. And I do wonder how other people of different demographics internalize that message.
That's interesting. Because I was basically trying to say that some of the biggest televangelists, prosperity gospel people, were white people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and their congregation were white though.
Yeah.
But then it came into us, and then we've just kind of...
Yeah.
But anyway. Good morning.
Morning.
How are you?
Thank
Good. I'm all right, thank you. I'm all right. Do you want to put the mic a bit closer?
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's right. Do you want to tell the people what your name is, who
Yeah.
you are?
Thank you. I'm Dr. Amber Qureshi. I'm
Okay.
a clinical psychologist.
Say it with chest.
Yeah,
Say it
I'm
with
not
chest.
used to saying the.
Not everyone's
You're
a doctor,
Dr.
you know?
Amber, say it with chest.
I'm not used to saying the doctor title. Though. That's the thing. I would just
Say
say
it
I'm
with
Amber.
chest.
All right.
All right, doctor with chest. There you go.
All right. Well, we've pretty much done most of the show. Yeah, it's literally down to the interview.
Yeah.
So I want to definitely get into that, man. And the people have been waiting, man. You know what I'm saying? So let's get into it.
Excited.
Right.
Are you excited?
All right. So, before we do every interview, to break the ice, we ask a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
So we've got something called 140, right? Funny enough, your friend and colleague, Dr. Amani,
Yeah.
she, I believed, was she the best last year?
She's always the best, no?
Oh, right.
I think she was joint first or joint second.
Okay.
Yeah, man. So she did really well. So let's see if you're...
All right, pressure.
You know what I mean? But essentially, we ask a bunch of questions. Some of them are preference questions. Some of them is like based on real truths, right?
Yeah.
60 seconds to answer them.
All right.
Answer them as quick as possible.
Okay.
And yeah, all the best, man.
As in one's
You
going
know,
first.
you can help him.
All right.
All right.
All right, Brent, when you're ready.
If you don't know it,
Yeah, if you don't know, just say
calm.
pass.
Yeah.
you want as many as possible
All
on
right.
the
All
board.
right.
All right. So, Manuel, ready?
I am ready.
Okay. Dr. Ron, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it.
3, 2, 1.
What is the hardest natural substance on earth?
Oh my God, pass. Oh my God.
How many weeks are there in a leap year?
54.
Plant-based or animal products?
Plant-based.
Who was the first black actor to win an Academy Award?
Pass.
What's the tallest building in the world?
Burj Khalifa?
Fiction or non-fiction?
Fiction.
Finish this sentence. The Egyptians were
Amazing.
poetry or prose?
Poetry.
Who founded the UNIA?
Pass.
How many edges does a cube have?
16.
God,
That's
God,
mad. I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all.
God or evolution?
Oh God.
How many days does a leap year have?
366.
What's the tallest mountain in the world?
Oh, mad. Pass. I need to be quick.
Text or voice note?
Oh, voice note always.
What's the main?
Did not help
The
us.
mountain one is going to aggravate me. You know, 'cause I was going to say Himalayas, but that don't sound right.
Everest.
Yeah,
Is
it's
it
Everest.
I
Yeah.
said Everest.
Mad.
You should have said it louder.
Mad.
Can people hear me? I don't know.
Mad.
But you know, you did all right, you know.
Nah,
Rel-
dude,
relatively.
Marnie must have gone crazy. Dr. Marnie.
Thank you.
Yeah. How many weeks in a leap year? 52. It's the same. Just an extra day in it.
Now, don't talk to him as though we're supposed to
Wait,
know
what did
this
you
off the
say?
head.
That,
The 54.
yeah. Now that you said it, it's mad. Yeah. Now that you said it, it's mad. I said 54. I don't know why I said 54.
Well, to be fair,
It's just
it's
an
the pressure.
extra
It's the pressure. innit? It's the pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy.
All right. So, like we said before, yeah, the people know you, right, from coming on community service. But if you don't mind, can you give like a proper introduction of who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Because I was also going to say, I don't think the people do know me. I think today
They
is going to be
don't.
quite a nice way for them to know me, actually.
Yes.
So, yeah, Dr. Ron, I'm a clinical and community psychologist. Bit of a weird title because we train as a clinical psychologist, but I identify as a clinical and community psychologist because a lot of my work happens in the community, but a lot of my work also instills community psychology principles.
Okay.
So with clinical psychology, predominantly, we tend to be within the NHS and kind of other statutory services. But the population that I want to work with and do work with, which is, I guess, young people, or actually just people generally that are affected by community violence, they don't tend to go to NHS services or traditional mental health services for their help and support. So for me, it's important that I'm in the community, my face is in the community, they understand that somebody like me exists, somebody like Dr. Amber exists, in order for them to reach out.
Okay. And Dr. Amber, can you do the same, please?
Yeah, I'm a clinical psychologist. I work in CAMS, Children and Adolescents Mental Health Services, but I work in a specialist service, so it's a youth justice.
Okay.
I really enjoy it. I've been there since qualifying and I'm still there. I don't plan to go anywhere as of yet. And yeah, it's quite similar to kind of what Dr. Ron described in that working with young people who have, of course, entered the youth justice system, but they're provided with support from a mental health perspective. The team there, like outside of CAMS, outside of the mental health team, there's so many other people there. I think the young people are provided with a really great package. They get access to a lot of different type of support. They have something called case managers who kind of oversee their entire time with us. And what I particularly like about the service I'm in, CAMS, is that we can actually continue to work with the young people even after they've finished kind of being there on a statutory period. So they might have to come for like 3 months, 6 months, a year. And we can keep that support ongoing, which lets us be more flexible, which I think is important. A lot of like mainstream services. So what I mean by that is kind of being, I don't know, if school make a referral or parents make a referral or a child themselves makes a referral, those kind of services, they are overstretched. They have to be kind of rigid. So I do get it, but I like that we can be really flexible and creative in how we work with young people and how the team work with young people.
Bit of a silly question, yeah. So is that linked to the NHS, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I said that. Yeah. So I work in the NHS and then I do private work on the side.
Okay, cool. So, but Dr. Ron, you mentioned that basically people wouldn't necessarily go to the NHS.
I mean,
like,
they do, but I guess, I think Dr. Amber's in quite a unique position because it's linked to the youth justice sector.
Okay.
Young people are forced to go.
It's
like mandatory. Is forced the right word? I don't know.
Well,
I might be.
there's
like,
two different
stretching it.
pathways, and if they're on a statutory order, that means they do need to come to the yacht.
Yeah.
It might be once a week, might be twice a week, depending on what it is, and they have conditions within that. But we do have another pathway, which is out of court, and as the name suggests, we're trying to keep the kids out of court.
Yeah.
And a part of that might be voluntary. And I'm always surprised by if someone doesn't need to come yacht, they might still come, and they want the support, and we'll work with the team. And
What makes somebody say, you know what, I don't need to be here, but I want to come here, especially when it seems as though most wouldn't opt for that sort of thing. Like, what's one of the biggest predictors, I guess?
In terms of, do you mean when it's not statutory?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it could be a range of things. So we work with children from 12 up until 18.
Okay.
So it's very rare we get 18-year-olds, but I mean, they're not children at that point, to be honest. But if they have just turned, for example, or have turned 18 whilst under our care, we would still support them. But I think age can play a big factor within that. If someone's like at school compared to college, or they're not even in education, for example, when it is non-statutory, so voluntary is what I mean by that. When it is that way, oftentimes it's like it could be a first offence, it could be like there's contextual risk involved. I mean, a lot of the young people we work with, regardless whether it's statutory or not, will present with contextual risk. So like maybe being exploited, for example, is what I mean by that. I think culture can play a massive role in that as well, like whether there's support behind the young person, whether that's from family, whether it's just a network around them. The borough I work in is quite a big borough, and oftentimes young people know other young people that have been there, so they might already know some of the team, and they'll be like, oh yeah, like I used to go there and I worked with this person. So I think there is a bit of a kind of community within that plays a role. But ultimately, I see it as in like when I say we, I mean my entire team, like we can be that first face that a young person sees. And if we can get engagement at that point and really, I guess, provide a bit of a nugget for a young person to see that they can gain something from being here, and it's not just I have to come here or I'll come here because it might look good later, then they'll engage. I'm always so impressed by the young people I see, the amount of engagement we see. And I think it's down to the team I work in. Like, they're a really good team.
Do you feel as though, I guess, you guys are doing stuff on social media that's making people also know about it? Or is it really word of mouth?
We're getting there. So I guess, yeah, and this will unfold as we go on, but we've kind of set up our own company now because I guess we've realized that a lot of, thank you for that. A lot of traditional mental health services aren't equipped to actually deal with what we describe as the nuances attached to community violence. Like community violence, that thinking before of black and white. We operate in the grey. We understand that things can't just be so dichotomous. It can't be just victim or perpetrators, and understanding that those identities are intertwined often within the same person. So how do we provide a service that acknowledges that doesn't feel so rigid, that is quite flexible, that is full of clinical psychologists who are, I guess, what we believe are psychologists that actually get it, that are psychologists from ends, that are psychologists that have our own lived experiences around these topics and how we bring that into the room to do the amazing work that we do.
And a creative. I think creativity is important in how we work with people who are affected by community violence, because a lot of the kind of models or therapies we've been taught in or taught to do, they are from a very westernized population and a very white population. And I think the teaching is great, but being able to be creative with it and allow, like, just being able to adapt it to suit someone's needs is really important.
So what are some of your lived experiences? Because to be able to go through this route, this education, become doctors, it's not easy, right? It's not easy. You know what I'm saying? And obviously you guys care about what you're doing, you know what I'm saying? So what I guess foster that passion?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. So from a young age, context, I grew up in Wandsworth. I'm a Wandsworth boy.
All right.
And I guess growing up in Wandsworth meant that I was often exposed to lots of kind of quote unquote gang rivalries between those in Tooting and Mitcham versus those in kind of Clapham Junction, Battersea, etc. And if you know the geography of the Wandsworth borough, you have to pass through Wandsworth, Wandsworth town technically. Yeah. So I was exposed to lots of things going on at such a young age. And because of the friends that I had, they had proximity to some of the gangs within Clapham Junction and Battersea. So there was a bit of an affiliation there, I would say. Yeah. But then kind of in my kind of teenage years, realizing that we were exposed, me and my boys, my core unit of boys, who I've known for about 20 years, like we're my guys, we were exposed to very traumatic situations that we shouldn't have been at a very young age. Yeah. And I guess I was quite a curious child. So I was often thinking, why are we having to like navigate and change our behaviors and ways of being in response to the things that we've been exposed to? I guess me now knowing those were trauma responses ultimately. And we were using trauma responses to, I guess, feel safe, to almost survive within a very dangerous environment. And the older I got, I guess it really kind of nourished my interest in, I guess school nourished my interest in wanting to understand human behavior anyway, why people do what they do. And that kind of took me down the path of wanting to do psychology, but wanting to focus on people who experience community violence.
All right. Thank you for that. Amber?
I think, I mean, I'm from the same area.
Okay.
So
One's off on the map.
just driven from there as well. So.
Did you guys know each other prior to?
No,
Okay.
no. We
No.
actually met on Twitter.
Yeah.
'Cause-
And then we just probably have mutual friends that probably know each other, but
Yeah, because
circles.
the school where I'm not gonna bait out your school, but the school that Dr. On went to, like I know people who went to that school as well, but we didn't know each other at that point. Yeah, and we just met on Twitter while we were both training, and Dr. On actually put out an article, "The Life of a Top Boy."
Yes.
And I read it, and I was just thinking, nah, this boy's from South London. Like the way he'd written it, and like the people he was naming in it, I was like, he's from South London, and I think we just started talking from there then, and then just clocked straight away that we're both from South, and just got on since. But yeah, I guess like similarly, kind of what Dr. Ron's mentioned. But for me, I think I've got to be honest, I didn't really know what psychology was when I was younger. Like I think. Like growing up, I was exposed to a lot of people around me, like the schools I went to, just the area I'm in, who had experienced community violence, and I knew kind of what it was at the time. And I did find that I was kind of a support system for them, but I didn't really know what psychology was. So I've like my story, but I only really talk about it now being qualified, because when I was still training or trying to get onto training, I was like, I don't think I should be saying these things. So like I have been kicked out of school quite a few times, and college as well. And like my educational system was a challenge. Like I've alhamdulillah, I've done well, but I struggled. And once like I got to sixth form, I was like, I need to turn my life around. Like I'm gonna give this sixth form. This is it. This is my last shot. And I wanted to do psychology at that point, and I applied. And originally they were like, "Nah, because your GCSE grade, my science grade wasn't strong enough." After like long story short, after a bit of a fight, they let me on. It was my weakest A level. Went to uni actually doing media. So I think that's where a lot of my creativity in terms of the work I do, like interventions I do with young people, comes from. And like a term in, I was like, no, I don't want to do this actually. Like I do want to do psychology, but I don't know exactly like how, I can't remember how I learned what it was like other than A levels, or like why I wanted to do it. I guess I always had the interest, but I couldn't pinpoint. I wasn't surrounded by any psychologist or had come across any to know that that's what it was. And then when I did my undergrad, I thought I was a psychologist. I didn't realize I had to do more. I was like, what is this? Is a scam. And then went on to do a master's. Again, thought I was a psychologist after that. But it's a long just thing after that. But yeah, it wasn't until my master's that I really understood, okay, I need to do a doctorate. This is what I got to do. But I think, like just my kind of upbringing and being able to talk about school exclusion is important to me, especially with the young people that I work with. And I actually work in the borough I grew up in, so everything that Ron's naming, like I'm familiar with it, and it's actually mad to see that it's still the case. Like these kind of postcode will still exist. Like all the names have changed for like what people go by. I can't keep up with that, but it's actually, I find it helpful having that insight. Having grown up in the borough and now working in it. And it feels like I'm giving back like to my community and continuing being able to support people.
Love that, man. We got a question from someone in the community, but I also want to add on another question as well, because I feel like it will probably be tied in. May seem like a silly question, but I want it to be clear. What is community violence in terms of experiencing that? And also, Ginger says, what's a trauma response? What makes any other reaction different from a trauma response?
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know if this is necessarily me bigging myself up, but I think I might have coined the term community violence. You know?
Okay.
Like when I'm in lots of spaces, I guess the language that we're often used to is gang violence, youth violence, serious youth violence, and with, I guess, my clinical psychology training, but me wanting to underpin it with community psychology principles, I'm always thinking about the we and not the I. I'm always and I guess maybe that's my African heritage as well. So when it comes to violence and this type of violence, from the get-go, I know that it's never about who's directly involved. We need to be thinking about the systems around them that are also affected, the whole community, hence community violence. So for me, it feels quite redundant when we talk about serious youth violence and gang violence because it's too limited and narrow for me anyway. So actually using language like community violence and being intentional with the use of that language, for me, is powerful and it's actually really right. I would say anyway.
I would add like there's different layers to it.
Yeah.
Like it could be I tend to say young person because I work with young people, but I don't necessarily just mean young people. But you can have a young person directly affected, but there's also vicarious trauma. So we might also get young people who have seen someone affected by it, and then have developed a trauma response that way. There is a natural recovery period. So the question that had come up about trauma responses, there is a natural recovery period. We wouldn't work with trauma or PTSD straight away. But I guess in terms of the question, like, I don't know if you'd agree with this one, but I would say anyone and everyone can experience trauma in different ways, but not everyone will develop PTSD out of it. And PTSD is a diagnosis. It's kind of classified with different things like flashbacks, nightmares, re-experiencing. But people can experience trauma and be okay or not experience those symptoms.
And I guess just to add to that, I think it's so important when we distinguish between trauma and PTSD that we understand trauma, I guess, relates to mental health. That's how I would often describe it. PTSD is a mental health diagnosis. Very, very different. So like whenever I'm talking about trauma, again, for me, it's important to describe what we mean because again, from a psychological perspective, trauma is not recognized as a mental health diagnosis. So you will see that there are lots of different definitions around what trauma is, which I think makes it's somewhat harder when you are having discussions about trauma to truly understand what do you think you mean and what do I mean when we're talking about this term. So it's about sense making and trying to understand how people have come to understand these ideas.
So would you then say that everyone's experienced trauma now?
I think it's up to them really and how they perceive it. Because I don't even use the word trauma. I don't know if a part of that is because I work with kids. So I usually tend to say like things that you found difficult or scary experiences, things like that. If they're on the younger end, like 13, 12, I would probably use like scary experiences. But on the older end, I might even give examples. And the NHS loves questionnaires. So we would use I have like a PTSD questionnaire I might use, and in that there's like specific events. But outside of that, just us having like, I guess, living in the area, having our own lived experiences, like we can kind of use those questionnaires and then expand on it with other questions. So I might ask around it, but I tend to not use those words like PTSD or trauma. I might talk about the brain or the effects of PTSD, for example, or how we might experience a trauma response, so like our heart beating fast or things like that. But I don't tend to use the language. I think, everyone has probably experienced some type of traumatic event, whether it's directly or vicariously. There's also intergenerational trauma, so that's kind of like passed down from families. There's like community trauma, like Grenfell is an example of that as well.
Of what? Of intergenerational?
Community kind of.
Cool.
No. Well, maybe intergenerational. I guess like if I unpick it more, you could argue like people who were living there. Is it that like they were living as a result of like living with family, like layers of family, or houses being passed down that way, or things like that.
Even displacement, possibly. The fact that you might have come from a country where you were already displaced, living in Grenfell now, and have again been displaced. And actually, I think there's so many layers to it when we think about trauma generally.
So basically, in that situation, that will basically reinforce everything that happened the first time, basically. Or
I want to go back to Abba's original point because it's really subjective. So I guess our role as psychologists, and actually what I think our role as a good psychologist is to not give labels to people, but to provide knowledge and understanding around these ideas for us collectively to make sense together. So I might in the back of my mind like assess a young person and be like, you've been through hella traumatic situations and events, and I could think to myself, you might have PTSD, but I think it's important that the young person themselves comes to understand and make sense of that, and actually whether they've seen those situations as traumatic or not, because I might have seen them as traumatic. But again, human beings are very resilient, very, very resilient. So I can't always say, are you sure that wasn't a traumatic situation? Are you sure you weren't traumatized from that? It's about how do I provide lots of, I don't know, knowledge about trauma responses for you to think, oh, hang on. No, I have had that trauma experience. I have had issues with sleeping. I have had nightmares. I didn't know that that's a symptom of PTSD. I didn't know that that's a trauma response. Could that then mean this might have affected me more than I thought? Generates conversation.
What I guess, what creates the framework that you guys work from? So, for example, like you said, you'd have different thresholds for what is PTSD and what is this or whatever. What shapes that? Is my question too? Is it too?
I think I have an answer
nice
for it.
guidelines.
I was going to say the DSM.
Yeah, ICD.
Yeah, do you use ICD?
Yeah, it's the UK.
I didn't use the DSM. Yeah.
Well, what's the ICD?
But I guess these are manuals
Yeah.
that psychiatrists and psychologists use in order to feel confident that they could say this person has a certain
So you
mental
have
health
to hit
diagnosis.
like thresholds
Exactly.
and have like, oh, I've been experiencing this for like 2 weeks and it's persistent and I have three of these things. Yeah.
So I don't know how it is for the ICD, but for the DSM-5, there were 8 criteria that need to be met in order for somebody to have a formal diagnosis of PTSD.
Okay, cool. So this is basically where I'm coming from. Could one argue, I'm not trying to say this is the case, but could one argue that some of these things are different in Europe compared to Africa, compared to different parts of the world?
As in the experience of
in terms
PTSD.
of the guidelines, so the thresholds. So for example, if you experience certain things for 2 weeks, it's X. In another part of the world, could it be 3 weeks? It's this, or should it be different? Or is it like a blanket thing for all human beings because all of us should be at a certain place?
That's a good question.
I mean, my understanding is that they're quite international based.
Okay.
And I think the criteria involved within these manuals, people experience across the board irrespective of the demographic, actually. Okay. So I don't think, so again, from the DSM-5 perspective, I don't think any of them are necessarily westernized trauma responses per se. Okay. The language we use might be westernized. And when I think about the creation of these manuals, they were probably from westernized individuals, white individuals, who were speaking for the world. And actually we know in lots of countries in the world, they don't necessarily relate to these ideas.
I guess I'm asking for a plethora of different reasons, but one example comes to mind is the whole the treatment of black women, for example, when it comes to giving birth and stuff, right? A lot of these things would be framed, or at least the impression is framed from what they learn in school, right? In learning medicine and stuff. These are professional doctors who are looking at black women and saying, you guys, threshold for this is this, but white women is this. Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, but that will be based on medicine. But obviously it's not, it's straight racism and discrimination. How much of that is in you guys' guidelines? Have you noticed it? Is it there? I don't know.
I mean, as a profession, it's there. So like when I was, I guess in the beginning stages of my journey to be a clinical psychologist, I kind of mentioned before, I'm a very curious person. So for me, I wanted to understand what was the inception of clinical psychology. And its inception was very racist. It was at a very racist time where the models, the thinking around differences between black people and white people was bonkers. And that has unfortunately fed into the profession where we are, I don't know, thinking about the way that cognitive assessments are done and the types of people that these assessments were created with. And then when you are doing them with people that aren't white or from westernized backgrounds, the impact that it has can be quite significant. So an example being, I don't know, have you done the top?
No.
So there's this assessment that you can do, the top, before you do a waist assessment. And it's, you get people to pronounce words. The words are crazy, crazy words. But again, you see how the racial bias comes into
Exactly.
that because of the nature of the words.
Yeah.
So some people will be like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And I've done it with other people, white people, were like, oh yeah, I know what that is. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that is crazy work.
Yeah.
But that can then dictate how you go about doing other
Exactly.
cognitive assessments.
Exactly.
And that's very problematic.
That's why I guess it's sorry, go on.
Oh no, do you know what cognitive assessment is?
No, I want
Yeah.
to. Yeah,
I was
go
gonna
to-
say, it's
Good shout.
essentially it's kind of like looking at weakness and strengths in someone's brain and how it works. So like maybe I'm basing this off a WISC, which is what I tend to use in my role. The WACE is the adult version of that. Ron mentioned it. I don't know the TOPS things that
the top
you
is
mentioned.
crazy. Yeah.
But yeah, it's looking at areas like we might look at like processing speed, we might look at like verbal comprehension, and what kind of Ron's mentioned about it being based or created with very Western white populations, the words or the language used in it may not be an accurate representation of the results we're getting. So, for instance, I've done one recently with a young person who is from a South Asian background, but English was their second language and they acquired it moving to the UK later in life. They were 10 when they'd moved, and I'm asking them like similarities between two words. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but they're very kind of English like based words, and that it does require, I guess, having learnt the language, and because he'd acquired it through school, just through talking to peers, teachers. He wasn't formally taught it in that way, and his parents don't speak English themselves, and so his learning, he didn't have that template from young in that sense. So his results, I'm still taking them and scoring them in that sense, but I am holding in mind that it might not be an accurate representation of his verbal comprehension or even processing speed. Like in certain cultures, like you may not want to, so a part of it is like you're timed and you're just giving answers, but you might want to slow it down, think about it rather than giving a rushed response. Like there are kind of cultural variations that play a factor within that, and how we're taught to maybe talk softer or not think before, talking before we're thinking and things like that. So it does make a lot of the measures that we're talking about, especially cognitive assessments, really difficult to use.
You guys are really doing the Lord's work there, man. Because essentially, a lot of people could find themselves in worse situations or just not get the help they need, if not for people like you, who are sensitive to the differences in our culture and communities. You know what I'm saying? Are you guys, is that one of the reasons why you actually got into it, to make sure that these things kind of, you know what I mean, like you help people that look like you, that you kind of represent? Or was it just
I think for me, at the beginning stage, no.
Okay.
Whilst I was on training, I was like, this is a madness.
Yeah.
And I guess I was already thinking about the fact that we would eventually be doctors in clinical psychology, which means we would hold a lot of power and privilege to challenge things, to critique things, to be in spaces, to basically do the work that you're talking about. So whilst I was on the doctorate, I studied at University of Hertfordshire. That's where the turning point was for me. I was in this environment, surrounded by lots of white people. My own cohort, 23 of us, I was the only black person. So I kind of knew that I wanted to bring this understanding, because I think there's a lot of merit to some of the things that we learn still on the clinical psychology doctorate, but I wanted to adapt it knowing that these aren't always helpful and applicable to the people that look like me, the people that I want to work with, the people that I feel have been left behind by traditional mental health services.
I went to your Instagram, and you've got like a series that kind of looks at how music plays a role in this.
I should have carried on doing that. You know?
Can you explain that to the people, please?
I'm a big lover of UK rap.
Okay.
I love UK rap. And I guess Amber kind of mentioned, so before The Formal Life of a Top Boy, I wrote an article called The Hidden Life of a Top Boy.
Okay.
And that's where I was using the rap lyrics to, I guess I think that was probably my first almost like challenge to the system, the clinical psychology system. Because I was like, you lot are so accustomed to reading academic journals and publications and taking quotes from that. And I was like, you know what, like for black people, oral storytelling is big for us. So what I wanted to do was draw lyrics from a genre that I think is often quite villainized anyway, and I think that the clinical psychology world would have quite a negative perception about. And I wanted to pull quotes that were very much speaking about trauma experiences, so that I guess it could equate to psychologists' understanding. So it was almost like a bridge between your academic knowledge and psychological understanding and then the community. And there's often a massive disparity. So I was like, I think this is a great piece that could start to bridge that, where you can understand that when you're now, if you are ever listening to rap music, think about it from a trauma-informed lens. Think about what is being said, why it's being said.
Can you give an example of that? I don't want to put you on the spot.
Maybe use Dave, if that helps. I can't remember what lyric it was.
I'm trying to think what am I even listening to recently that might have sparked my interest. Because in the article I've referenced, I feel like Stormzy, Dave. Rams, Heady One even. But you know what? I will bring up Fredo, and I'll bring that up because whenever I'm lecturing, so context, I think it's important that we don't just do the work, we instill this knowledge in the next generation of clinical psychologists. So I'm quite intentional in lecturing all across the UK, if I'm honest, for future clinical psychologists. And I have a particular lecture that focuses on the work that we do and like the black community. So I play Fredo's second Daily Duppy. And what I tell the whole room to do is get the lyrics out, because obviously people can't follow that quick. And I get all of the people in the room to dissect it from a clinical psychology trauma-informed lens. And when you do that, you start to really reframe how you've seen the song. Because if I played it initially, a lot of the people in the room are probably like, what is this garbage? But then when I tell them to think about it from a trauma-informed perspective, very, very different. And within that, Fredo's Daily Duppy, he's talking about going to jail at 15, family not coming to see him. Even the idea of driving with no tints. And I say to the group, like, why do you think he does that? They don't get it. That's a survival instinct. That's based off a trauma response. And actually, by you tinting your windows, that is to navigate survival and self-preservation. So like, it might seem very trivial to us because we listen to this music, if we do listen to this music regularly, but a lot of people don't get that. And that might seem scary, knowing that these are clinical psychologists that are going to be in a position of power to actually possibly work with populations like that. And if they don't understand these nuances, they don't understand this lifestyle, that's going to be very detrimental.
I want us to get into Life of a Top Boy, because I think that was one of the things that that kind of, in fact, that's the way you guys made it. Like you saw it online.
The hidden one.
Sorry, the hidden
one,
So, in fact, what is the difference between the first one?
So, I mean, it's just the time. What the Hidden Life of a Top Boy and Top Boy. So the Hidden Life of a Top Boy is just a random article that I wrote. I think I was like
your first year?
I don't even, was I first year?
Yeah. We were on training.
First year.
Yeah.
Where I guess I've entered the clinical psychology system. I'm like, nah, like I really want to challenge this. I was feeling brave. And I don't know what that's about. Maybe I've been thinking about that quite a lot, but I was really brave during my doctorate, like challenging things, dictating how I wanted this doctorate to be. But the Life of a Top Boy is basically my thesis. So in order for us to technically be qualified as clinical psychologists, we have to do a thesis, a bit of research. And I guess at the beginning stages, when I'd written that article, I was like, I know that my thesis has to be centering young black boys, young black men, and it also needs to focus on trauma and PTSD. So that was kind of like the premise. And then I created this amazing resource. So I guess I created the resource because I know I won't say nobody to generalize. Not many people are going to read 36,000 words of my thesis. Like, come on, let's be real. So for me, it was important that I created a digestible resource for the community, because ultimately I was always doing this for the community anyway. So yes, of course, I was going to benefit from being a clinical psychologist. But before I even did the research, I was consulting black guys. I was like, do you think there's merit in me doing the research? Because for me, from the get-go, I had to feel like it was coming from the people. And I was just that conduit that was going to allow this work to be done.
In that same thesis, right, you talk about young black boys are not hard to reach.
Easy to ignore.
They're just easy to ignore. Please speak on that a bit more, please.
You can probably speak on that as well from your experience. But again, I guess when I was in NHS environments, I was really confused about why I wasn't seeing black people.
Yeah.
So in terms of, and I guess our training experience will be different because Dr. Amber trained in London. I trained in Hertfordshire. But and I don't know how it was for you, but usually every 6 months you get a new job, a new placement. Because the idea is that you need to be able to work with lots of different populations.
Okay.
So my first placement was in an adult community mental health team. I wasn't seeing black people, bizarrely. The second one was a neurodevelopmental service. Wasn't seeing black people. And that one bothered me a lot because when I think about TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, and kind of even the fact that when young people are engaging in violence, often they're being hit around the head and there isn't often a follow-up from that. So I was curious, like, why am I not seeing just youths generally in this type of environment? Then went to CAMS, started seeing black people actually. But interestingly, my last placement was in a prison. Of course, I saw black people everywhere. How ironic. So, and I guess I deliberately chose to be in a prison because I wanted to work with black people and unfortunately knew this is an environment where there's going to be loads of them in abundance.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a powerful experience, really powerful and I saw how powerful it was for the inmates to see a black male clinical psychologist because we're quite rare. We don't exist
This is it.
very much in this profession. So that was powerful on the one hand, but then I also had to deal with the systemic racism from the system, the prison system actually.
Yeah.
So there were times where prison officers were mistaking me for the inmates because they weren't used to seeing a black man that wasn't an inmate. And I was like, wow, this system is this what we're still dealing with? It's heavy. Yeah, heavy.
What some of both of you? Yeah, what are some of the most surprising things that you've got from certain conversations with people, like that you've actually helped?
Go
Mm.
on.
Just the resilience I see. Like, I'm working with kids. Like, their brains aren't fully developed yet. They're still learning life. They're still learning their identities. They're still navigating how to deal with emotions. Like, they're still learning who they are becoming. And I mean, a part of it is normalized for them, which is really heartbreaking. And I get it. I hear it. I think normalizing as well is it's just a way of coping with things as well. And if that's what you see or that's what you're exposed to, that's all you know. Like, that's your template for dealing with things. But honestly, like, they're so resilient. And I think it's just like, the conversations I just have with these young people that I work with, the amount of insight they have, the amount of motivation they have. And ultimately, like, not even just young people, adults too who have kind of come through to like a justice kind of system. So whether it's like probation, prisons, there's so much power in their story. And like we was talking about rap lyrics earlier, and I think, I mean, personally, I think there is a type of therapy that does account for that. It's called narrative therapy, and it's about rewriting your story, reframing narratives. And I guess, like, if I have a young person who's just come through, who's had kind of nuggets of support previously, but ultimately the system's failed them, like schools failed them, didn't pick up on, I don't know, ADHD diagnosis, and they've ultimately been seen as a bad kid, quote unquote bad kid, and they've internalized that. Like, I don't blame you for that. Like, and I think it's powerful trying to help them rewrite that story and rewrite that narrative and reframe it. And I do like the conversations where it's just simply like saying, this ain't your fault. Like, what's happened to you here and how you've ended up coming here is not your fault. Like, you've been failed by a system or by systems around you that were built to support you. And in ways that might even include the NHS. I hate to say it. I work for them, but there's definitely like wonderful parts of the NHS. But I think, like, at that age, like, school is a massive part of their life. Like, if they're in school and if you're being kicked out or not supported in that way, or ultimately the school's not built for the needs that they have, like, it is really difficult. So I'll just say, the resilience I see and the engagement that can happen, and it's just powerful. Like, they're turning up on a statutory order. Like, no one wants to be at your, like, no one wants to come, but they'll still rock up, engage with the team, engage with assessments, like, speak so openly about their own mental health. And a lot of the times they're like, right, like I haven't even been asked these things before. Like this is the first time someone's asked me like how I am, or what does anger look like, or how do you know you're sad? And it's a space that they have to talk, and I just think it's just powerful. And I don't know if that really even answers your question.
It's funny you mentioned something there about the system failing them. I got a friend who's also a clinical psychologist. Got so much respect and admiration for her. And she basically intimated one time that she may kind of struggle with the idea of being part of the system that's reinforcing these things, but also trying to not be part of the system to also help. Do you guys sometimes struggle with that as well?
Do they work in the NHS?
Yes.
The reason I ask, because I think that does make a massive difference in ways. Because you are a part of a particular body, and you have particular like rules or guidelines that you need to follow. That's not to say go rogue or whatever, but you work under a system. So like, for example, when I say some systems have maybe failed the young people that I work with, is that there might be a discharge period. So like if you fail to show to an appointment and don't say nothing, you're immediately discharged, where I will be ringing my young person down and be like, look, you need to come, because I don't want you to get in further trouble, because if they don't rock up, like there is potential consequences that can happen. But I think the yacht I work for are really good at being understanding about that, but not all services are built to do that. And yeah, like if they don't, it's just as simple as that. If you're late, you're not seen. If you don't turn up, you're discharged. That letter goes to your GP, and that's it. Some young people I work with don't even know who their GPs are. They haven't had interactions, or some of them, even worse, don't even have a GP. They haven't ever registered. Or since moving, because I work with a lot of looked after children as well, so they've moved to the borough from a different borough. They don't know the area, or haven't transferred care. So I think it's probably a big part of why we've started our business, really, in terms of at that point we're working for ourselves, can kind of make our own rules in that way. But I do think there's pros and cons, because I think in way I feel very protected by the NHS in that sense. There's safeguarding, there's like duty, so like that's like 24 hours support if needed. We have like crisis lines, so there is a blanket of safety within that, and a wider multidisciplinary team. And I don't mean my own team, but like just wider across the Wandsworth Borough. Like Ron mentioned, working in a neurodevelopmental team that's down the road from me, where I work. So it's nice having those connections and plugs that way. Whereas when you're solely on your own, or working for a charity, for example, you may not have the same wider system.
Which is my experience.
Yeah.
So my experience is very, very different to Dr. Amber's. So I guess with that idea of being within the system to change the system, I felt like that for time. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm built for this, actually, because the way that what I was seeing from like all of the bureaucracy, I guess what I was perceiving as the inability to be flexible and respond quite quickly, I was like, I know that I can do that in different spaces. So my work predominantly now is in the charity sector, working with community organizations where I can respond quite quickly in the way that I think it can be quite helpful for young people. So if we use the discharges kind of scenario, I've been in NHS services where they're like, all right, 3 strikes and you're out. But it isn't always like a lot of a contextual understanding around why the individual hasn't been able to attend those appointments. So I guess with where I'm at now, I can do that. But also means if I don't see people for 3 weeks, I'm not discharging them. Like I have that flexibility and that autonomy to be like, you know what? There's one Don that I haven't seen for about 3 months, but he knows that should he shout me, I'm here.
You're there,
And that's the difference. So like when we think about ideas like attachment theory, for me, it's trying to create the secure attachment base so that a young person knows I am here. And whether you come forth, go back, you will always know that I'm here. And they know that. So it can go 3 months, it can go 6 months. They might be dealing with a whole madness in the whole private life. But then they know, you know what? If I need to chat about something, let me reach out to Dr. Ron.
Can something like that be dangerous or detrimental to that person? Because it's almost like, correct me if I'm wrong, only when it gets serious enough I'm going to come. Help me to get it down below this threshold. I'm go and live my life. Above again, come back. You know what I'm saying? Like how do you help that person to get it down to where it should be?
So I feel like the way I think it's because of the hand movements you've done. It makes me think of like a crisis response.
Okay,
so
yeah.
there are teams
Yeah.
that are just solely deal with crisis, but
Okay,
I'm
cool.
not crisis in this sense. But
Yeah.
like, I guess like if someone, I don't know if I need to give disclaimers or anything, but if someone's like very highly suicidal
Okay.
and has a plan to act on it, for
Yeah.
example, there are teams
That's a different
that
team,
are based for
yeah,
that. Yeah,
okay.
but I think it's similar in the approach though. You're dealing with a crisis response perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
and it might be kind of supporting with dysregulation at that point. And when you work with trauma and PTSD, there needs to be some kind of buy-in to it. It's not the easiest work. I mean, for someone receiving it as support, it's not the easiest thing. So if there's no buy-in, it can be quite damaging to do because it might be quite bitty or not completely finished because you're taking a memory out, processing it and putting it back in neatly, kind of. So with trauma and PTSD, it might be quite fragmented, which is why people might experience reliving or find themselves as if they're back there or see something that triggers that memory again. But in order to do that, then there needs to be buy-in.
And consistency.
Yeah, and I think, so I'm guessing from what Ron's described, he's not doing that type of work in that moment. It's more kind of bringing that crisis down. So emotional regulation perhaps, or just building that relationship until
exactly
that person is ready. And I think a lot of services, like, I'm talking about the NHS because I work in it, but it's overstretched. It is hard to be able, I'm sure like there's wonderful clinicians who would love to do that, but they just can't. There's no capacity for it. And similarly, like I have young people on my caseload that I just haven't discharged and probably should because they've finished or something, but we still catch up. Like they're still, they want that support or something happens or they've gone missing or things like that, and I'm not going to discharge them just because they've gone missing. Like I will hold out hope that something will happen, or even if they decided they don't want that support anymore, I want to document that you are okay, like something like you come back. So if someone else is going to work with them in the future, there's enough there as a bit of a recommendation or a bit of a plan. But I think with the crisis stuff, it's important to hold it in mind because Ron mentioned attachment theory. I love a bit of attachment theory, but one thing I think about within it is something called relationship to help, and that is based on your attachment that you receive from your primary caregiver when you're younger. But it's essentially how you approach help seeking, and a lot of that might be modeled to you not just through primary caregivers, but also maybe siblings, maybe friends, maybe what your own kind of, even like social media can play a role. And I think it's great what Ron's doing because that person he's working with is seeking out for support at a time he feels ready. I'm assuming it was a he, sorry, at a time that he feels ready and at a time that he feels he needs it and he knows Ron's there. That is building a longer term relationship to help. It's helping maybe rewrite some stories that person might have about help seeking. Not everyone's going to go to their GP and be like, I'm struggling with this particular incident. And I think it's important to be able to, help seeking looks different for different people. That might be due to our own ideas, norms. I might have tried to seek support before. I have actually. I have OCD, to be honest. So, and it was I found it helpful, but it was very manualized. 6 sessions, and after the 6 sessions, that's it, done. And that doesn't work for everyone. It may work for some people, may not work for other people, or some people need a bit more flexibility with it. And to have that positive experience once is what I try to instill in my role. If I can have that first meeting with a kid that I see and make a meaningful difference to them, whether they choose to work with me after or not, because we work on a consent-based thing, they don't have to work with us. I'm asking you. I'd say, I'd like to see you again. We can work on this. But if I can show you we're not all bad or there is some support available there, but you don't have it, you don't need to do it now, it can happen in the future. I think that in itself is good enough sometimes in that moment until someone's ready.
Firstly, thank you for clearing that up so I fully understand, so the people understand. Secondly, you mentioned obviously the NHS being overstretched. If there was if Sir Keir Starmer invited you guys to Down Street right now and said, guys, we need your expertise, right? we understand what's going on to some degree, but you guys are boots on the ground. What's one thing that you guys will recommend he changes that will have the biggest effect in your work?
Wow.
No. I feel like I need to revise for this one.
Yeah, wow.
No, just give me a moment.
I know
Just
it's a
processing.
tough.
No, it's a
question, I
good
guess.
question.
It's a very good question. I'm thinking about the immediacy. So I'm actually thinking about the way that NHS services physically look.
Okay.
I don't think they're enticing or attractive, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I think there's something about also the clinicians that are in those spaces. I also think there needs to be more joint working between youth workers and psychologists, because youth workers are doing amazing work.
Yeah.
And I guess they do the bits that I don't think many psychologists can do, if I'm honest. Particularly around the relationship building.
Okay.
They are really, really good at doing that.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm generalizing here. But I guess within my experiences, that's what I've seen. So I'm thinking about quick, practical things that I think can be done quite quickly. I think there's something about how buildings look which mean that young people don't feel comfortable to even enter spaces. When I was doing one of my placements with a charity in North London, it was in a youth club ultimately. And when I was having conversations with them about, and some of them had kind of like dealings with CAMS and were often talking to me about the fact that they're not trying to rock up to a building that's plastered personality disorder service. That's crazy work.
Yeah.
Like, where's the anonymity for people to feel comfortable to enter the service to begin with?
Yeah.
So just little things like that. I think they could make a huge, huge difference.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first thing that came to mind was like bridging the gap between kind of the NHS and other services. So like Ron mentioned, like youth clubs, I think as well is helpful. Mentors, schools, just ultimately meeting young people where they're at to reduce that barrier and the I can never say that word, anonymity within that. I'm also thinking about like, because I guess like from his point of view, ultimately he probably comes from a lens of like public protection and like where money can be distributed evenly and things like, well, I'm assuming anyway, that's probably where his mind's at. And I think there's ways to like kind of meet in the middle with that. And I think like break down barriers in meaningful ways. So like even whether it's like being in schools and providing support of like, this is what things might look like. So if someone is experiencing PTSD, this is what it could look like. Just providing like nuggets of education, I think. And that might start within the curriculum and being more broad. I find it interesting actually because I work with a young person, 17, but this isn't my NHS role, this is my private role. And she's at private school and she's been taught CBT types of like techniques already. So like things like mindfulness, breathing. And she was like, oh yeah, I've already done that. And I was like, oh, where did you learn that? Because you said you've not had therapy before. And she was like, they teach us it in school.
Wow.
And I was like, oh wow. Like, I mean, she goes to a private school, it's a bit different, but I think within mainstream schools, I was like, that should be something that is taught, or at least the techniques taught to help young people, because even if they don't feel like they're gaining from it themselves, it can support them with their siblings, their parents, with their friends. And I think just having insight can be helpful, and just a lot more is needed in just educating people about what might be going on so they can make an informed decision of whether actually I'm struggling with this, or I know someone that's struggling with this. How do I get that support? Where can I go? And then that leads into what Dr. Ron was saying, as in like, these services need to be more accessible in many ways. I'm thinking as well, there's a theory or model called the social model of disability.
Okay.
And it basically is that it's society that's designed essentially to not cause a disability, but to make it more difficult. So I always think of like a wheelchair user. They're not disabled because they are in a wheelchair. This is what the model is saying. They're disabled because society is not equipped to support them, or there's no lifts in a building or no ramps to enter a building. And I think it's important to hold that in mind as well. And that's something that the government should be looking at to make things more accessible, not just to make buildings look nice, but actually accessible in ways, translated documents, helping parents or or just people who do struggle with kind of like questionnaires or lengthy documents, or that might be based on like undiagnosed needs, like the cognitive assessments we're saying, because there's a lot of stigma there. There's a lot of like, if I struggled to read something, let's say, I wouldn't want to be reading a lengthy document, especially if I'm the caregiver there for my child and they're counting on me, or services are expecting me to deal with it. I think there's a lot there that can be done.
Using that same analogy of the wheelchair, how much of that is the government or the powers that be not caring versus not knowing? Because I feel like sometimes we may take for granted and think like this is just obvious. Someone should know this, right? But sometimes it's not necessarily the case, right? Until you really point it out and really show them that this is something you need to fix, right? How much of that is knowing versus just not caring?
No, do you know what's coming up for me is like when throughout training, like there is a whole like debate of like it's up to people who aren't from white backgrounds basically to speak up, or like who should be kind of talking about these things, and often it does just naturally fall on people from those backgrounds. But I think a big part of it as well is that like I can talk from my experience. I can't expect someone from a white background, for instance, to talk for my experience. They may not have, they won't have the same understanding. Like, and equally, someone who's from a similar background to me also might not have the same experience, same understanding. And I think a part of it is the reliance on, so I guess wheelchair users for those people having to speak up, and whether if they even want to, like why should they? I don't think they should. Like I think it's should be just a given that should be taken into consideration, but it does take a lot of resilience to speak up as well, or a lot of it's draining. Like it can be exhausting. Like you might be advocating, you might be protesting in ways almost, and if people aren't hearing you or you're not feeling validated in what you're saying, like it might be difficult to keep going. And if there's no change happening, it's just exhausting anyway. And oftentimes there probably isn't. I think there is a part of I guess the government recognizing that, but then equally people could argue that if they don't have that experience, how can they? So I think it is, I don't know if you've got anything to add on that. I think it's a bit of a tricky situation in that sense.
I was just going to say, I don't think people are curious enough. I don't think politicians are curious enough. I don't think the general person is curious, but more so about other people's experiences. We're so accustomed and used to our own experiences or people similar to us that I rarely question how curious we are about just other people's experiences generally. So going back to the wheelchair analogy, how curious are you about the fact that this person is struggling to walk down the path or wheel themselves down the pathway whilst you're at the pub drinking your drinks? People don't care, unfortunately. And that's not to say that they don't have the capacity to care. I think sometimes we're just consumed with our own lives and what's going on, that it makes it really difficult to think about other people. And for me, that's the sadness.
But sometimes you can't recognize these things until a problem's been created. That I think also makes it quite difficult as well.
There's a question there, but I'm going to come to that a bit later. And I want to give a trigger warning. Trigger warning for two reasons, First, I'm going to talk about suicidal ideation. And secondly, because I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to start anything here. But we've had a conversation on the show, and it's happened outside of this, where we speak about the disparity between men and women when it comes to suicidal ideation, right? And how it's far higher for men. And sometimes you hear women say, we know how to seek help, right? So we kind of deal with this. You know what I'm saying, right? We know how to seek help, and so X, Y, Z. But the men, at some point, you guys need to do something for yourselves.
That's wild.
Is it really wild?
I think it is wild.
I do too. But
I'm going to say why I think it's wild.
Thank you very much. Explain.
Based on what you've said, for me, we have to think about the subjective nature of help. If, I guess what I'm understanding from what you've said is that maybe women are saying that men need to seek formal help from a mental health professional, for example. But when I think about me and my guys, for example, us talking is the help. Us conversing. And if I'm honest, actually, I know that with a lot of boys, a lot of men, they use humor to process the traumatic situations they've been through.
Yeah.
So from the outset, me and my guys might be contextually talking about mad stuff.
Yeah.
And if you're an outsider, you'd be like, what the hell is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
But we are using humor as a way to really formulate and process, okay, this is the situation that we went through.
Yeah.
How were we feeling as a result of that? Like, and I don't know if, I feel like me and my guys we're getting better at that. I think there's lots of masculine norms that have inhibited our ability to do that.
Yes.
If I'm honest.
Yes.
But my first inclination to that question would be, okay, we need to think about what we're saying when we think about help seeking.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the disparities with men and women with suicide, I, during my training, came across lots of research that was kind of alluding to the fact that's usually down to the mode in which people are using. So men will use more violent modes, which will increase the likelihood that they're going to die. Women won't use those same kind of harsh methods ultimately. So you have that as a factor as well. There's anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think I used to work in a crisis service, and like something that I feel like discussions that kind of tended to come up is people, again, trigger warning, but people who had attempted to end their lives and then weren't successful in it, and the guilt that might come with that, or kind of just anger that might come with that, that I wasn't successful, like this wasn't how it was meant to be. And I think that's also a area that's not really spoken about, or there's not really support out there, because sometimes people may have attempted and really wanted to in that moment and wasn't successful. Maybe support came in time, or for kind of what the different reasons might be, but then have at that point are in a bit of a better place, for example. So they're not in crisis anymore, but they're still struggling and struggling to deal with that and that kind of event that had happened. And I think, that can vary between gender. I don't think it's affected by gender, culture, race, and like whatever it might be. So I think that is an area that's needed. I feel like, because you said that maybe women might, I guess, maybe feel able perhaps to seek support more.
Help, but it's more, I guess, normalized amongst women to maybe go to a therapist. Or at least this is what I'm hearing. You know what I'm saying? Like, look, we go to therapy. We do this. We do that. But at some point, you guys can't just keep talking about the fact that these rates are so high. You have to do something about fixing this particular issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and it just made me think of that when we spoke about the wheelchair users. Like, does anybody say to them, well, you guys need to start campaigning for lifts? Do you know,
So like the individual agency, I guess.
You know what I'm saying?
I hear it. And I would say from my perspective, I think things are getting better. Like I have more, and I guess, disclaimer, I work predominantly with black men and black boys. So not just, but I guess a large percentage of my population would be black boys, black men. And I am constantly surprised and thankful of how many people reach out for help, actually. And that help might look very different. It might be about wanting a bit of knowledge around trauma responses or what trauma and PTSD actually is. It might be about actually having full-blown interventions to help process some of the things that you've been through. But the need is there. The need is there. I think it's easier possibly for women to say that because we work in a helping profession which is predominantly women anyway. So if you want to seek a therapist and a female therapist, they're in abundance. When black men want to speak to a black man, we're not in abundance. And that might be a crucial factor here, actually.
Yes, exactly.
Possibly.
I was going to say, I feel like as well, because there's a difference between having suicidal thoughts and intent to act on them. And I can imagine that probably plays a massive factor as well in seeking support. And that support will look differently depending on those two situations. Because I guess with no intent, perhaps, like if we think of the top of the iceberg, we might see someone experiencing suicidal thoughts, but I want to know what's underneath that. Like what's fueling that, what's leading to that. And oftentimes it might be other emotions like shame. Shame is something that comes up a lot. Embarrassment, guilt, anger as well. Often people see anger as a primary emotion, like something that's externalized as a behavior we see, but it's fueled by something. I think anger is a helpful emotion, personally. It's communicating something.
Yeah.
How that looks might not be the most helpful, but it's communicating something.
Yeah.
And oftentimes people may not know what's underneath it, or they've not kind of thought about it or even recognized, or it's something that's just inherently learned and it's just a pattern in that sense. But I think it's similarly with suicidality, so experiencing suicidal thoughts, like what's kind of happening underneath it, because there might be an element of stigma or shame or embarrassment to reach out. And if I'm thinking about someone reaching out to me as a woman, if it's a male, I guess what we were talking about before, it's perhaps I'm not understanding their experiences in that way, or there's just more kind of, because there's always going to be some type of unspoken assumptions that are made between us as psychologists and the people we're working with. But I think it's obviously we have knowledge and training, unconscious bias stuff, like we have to challenge that and ensure it's not coming up in our work. But equally, I know when I was on the other end receiving therapy for OCD, I was thinking, oh, how old is my therapist? Or she looks quite young. I wonder if she's the same age as me, or things like that.
And I guess with that bit, for me, it goes back to how transparent we are willing to be with the people that we work with. Because I guess some clinicians might be taught you have to distance yourself. You have to be really objective all the time. You can't show people who you really are. And I don't think that's always helpful. For the black men I work with, the black boys I work with, I know that can't run.
Yeah.
They need to understand a bit about who I am as an individual, where I come from, what am I about, in order to feel engaged to do the work.
Yeah.
So going back to that idea of the therapeutic relationship is so important. And I guess I'm afforded with the time to do that, so I can build that up before we even delve into the interventions, because I want you to feel comfortable that I'm the right choice for you.
Yeah. I want to ask that question from Gin and Gist. She said, can we ask the doctors to give a brief guide on the academic process that you guys went through to get to this level? That's for anyone out there who wants to aspire to follow in you guys' footsteps.
Headache.
I mean, I'm a bit of a nerd. I love learning, innit? So I had to count. I've done 10 years of education still.
10 years.
So yes, I did. But I guess part of that was on the journey to really wanting to become a clinical psychologist. But I guess at the beginning stages, that was for different reasons. I think part of it was to please my mum.
Yeah.
So my mum was like, why are you doing this whole psychology stuff? You're black, it's not for you. And then she was like, and then when she found out you could be a doctor, I was like, oh, all right, it's all right. But I did 4 years of undergrad. And then similarly to Dr. Amber, I was like, oh, I'm a psychologist now, which for me speaks volumes, because I don't know how it is now, but undergrads back then weren't really equipping us with what would be required in order to actually be a clinical psychologist.
Wow.
So there were a lot of naive people thinking, oh, we've done an undergrad in psychology, we're now psychologists. Not the case whatsoever. So then after that, I guess I was messing around on my undergrad, didn't do as well as I could have or should have. And when I was kind of applying for the doctorate, I was kind of like being told, this 2-1 ain't gonna cut it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, rah. So then I had to, or not had to, I guess I felt I had to do a master's to kind of boost that academic score up. So I did a master's at University of East London, clinical and community psychology, funnily. And I guess that kind of opened my mindset around liberation psychology, understanding the inception of clinical psychology and thinking about its racist historical roots. And then I guess that very much shaped how I wanted to show myself within this profession. So then after the master's, I guess I was still applying for the doctorate, not getting on. And maybe when you talk, provide some context to actually applying to the doctorate. So in the background, I keep applying for the doctorate and not getting on. So I'm thinking, I need to think about a plan B, just in case I don't get on. So my plan B was then to go down the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy route.
Okay.
So CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is a particular type of therapeutic modality, which is usually kind of focusing on people's thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and how they can, I guess, impact people's well-being ultimately. And that was kind of like a backup route that I felt like would be helpful, just in case I didn't get on the doctorate. Okay. So I did my kind of CBT training. Who was it? Royal Holloway University.
How long was that for?
1 year. 1
Okay.
year. Yeah. So masters was 1 year. That was 1 year.
Okay.
I did another CBT kind of intervention course 1 year. The undergrad, which is 4 years, and then after my cognitive behavioral therapy training, got straight onto the doctorate. So I didn't even have breathing time. It was continued uni now, and that was 3 years. So, and each course is very, very different. So I think there's like 30 odd. I'm gonna say 30 odd universities UK wide that offer clinical psychology training, but each course operates very, very differently.
Wow.
Based on the locality, based on what therapeutic modalities they want to teach or specialize in. So like you can have 5 clin psychs from 5 different unis and they will be very, very different based on that training.
And I think
experience.
sometimes you can tell.
Yeah.
Like where someone's trained.
Yeah. It's so funny that you can literally tell, oh, you trained here, didn't you?
Wow.
Yeah.
Also, they added, are there any grants or non-conventional pathways that someone can use to get into the field, right? Just in case there are some barriers to learning or getting into university.
I guess, like, just coming back to that first question about, I think it was like how you get on. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
So I
Or
think
education.
one thing that's helpful that I would say to someone so I actually do mentoring as well to support people from disadvantaged backgrounds to get onto the course. And I find it really rewarding. Like I wish I had it. I kind of figured it out as and when I went along. So I do want to like feed that back to people and support them. And what I always say, because I didn't realize there's different types of psychology undergrads. You need an undergraduate in psychology, but some aren't accredited. I actually can't remember what the accreditation is. It GVC, I think it's called. Yeah. And if you don't have an accredited one, like it's gonna hinder you in that sense. I don't know if it's still the case. I'm talking like
No, I think it is.
Oh,
No,
it
I
is.
think it
Okay,
is.
yeah. So one thing I would suggest is when you're thinking of your undergrad, ensure that it's accredited. If that's already happened and it's not, you can do a master's that can provide that accreditation. Because I think when it's not accredited, it's just not covering certain topics or something. I don't know exactly what they are. By chance, mine was accredited. It wasn't something I knew to look for, but thankfully it was. And then as Dr. Ron said, you don't need a master's necessarily. But I guess, I mean, people argue that ultimately it helps. And I mentioned that I did a master's, but I just did it because I was like, I don't want to work. Yeah, like I didn't, like I don't know, maybe I just thought I'm not ready to move back home. I don't want to work yet. Like, I just kind of was like, let me do another year in Brighton and do a master's. But that master's is what gave me the knowledge of how to get on and like understanding of what it's actually like to work as a psychologist. After that, you do need experience. So whilst Ron was doing a CBT training, he would have got experience within that because you need to complete a certain amount of hours. You'd have placement in that sense. So you do need experience. No uni will accept you straight, fresh out of undergrad, unless you had some years out before you went. But straight qualifying from undergrad, they're not going to take you on. And different unis have different
Requirements.
requirements of what they consider as experience for one and how long they'd like. I don't know if it's changed, but I remember when I was looking, King's wanted 6 months. UCL, I think that's where I trained, wanted a year.
Hertfordshire wanted 2 years.
Oh, Hertfordshire, yeah. So where Dr. On trained wanted 2 years. Like they're all different. And depending on where you're at when you're applying, it's what your experience is. I remember I was fuming because I applied. I can't even remember the unis, but one of them just considered me to not have enough experience, but the others did. And I was like, how does that make any sense? And the one that said I didn't have enough required less amount. So it's really dependent on unis. It's hard to kind of cater to every uni and then just like come into the application, I guess. Like you can apply for 4. But it would be one application. Okay. So it can be a bit techie to write that if you're trying to cater to all 4 and they're all quite different. Because different unis have different things they love or they want to. So UCL were really big on leadership and training people to become leaders in the NHS. So I just went ham on that, like in my application. But then other unis I may not have kind of appealed to them as much because of my application. But some unis also don't look at the application. They kind of require like a stats test or what's the one when you answer questions? Clinical reasoning, clinical judgment. I think it's called clinical judgment tests. And then you can get an interview from there depending on how well you've done. The uni process, so one of the things that makes it quite competitive, the clinical psychology doctorate, is because it's fully funded by the NHS and you're also on a salary at the same time.
Okay.
So it's a lot of money being put into us to train us, and psychologists aren't expensive. They aren't cheap. They're very, like, a lot of NHS roles specifically might not even be full time because of how expensive we are to employ. So it's like there's no. I don't know if that would be the grant, I guess, in terms of the question that was asked. So you don't have to pay. Just to say, though, that is if you are a UK resident. They do have international trainees and they have to pay, which I think is...
people pay for it.
Yeah, I think it's horrible, like, because you're paying for it and you're working, but you're not paid for the work. So it's a very different experience for international trainees and really harsh, I think, in that way. But yeah, my experience was that it was fully funded by the NHS and I was on a salary at the end of it. And yeah, so they do take into account those things, but from my understanding, you can't get additional scholarships or things like that because you're not paying for it. And they do, I mean, this is probably uni dependent, but they do take into account additional needs. I'm sure all unis do, but I can speak for UCL. They definitely had like additional needs for people, like extra time and exams and things like that. I don't know if that answers the question, but whoever asked, if you need more,
shout us, because I was going to say, like, entry roles, just quickly, it could be like an assistant psychologist, a psychological well-being practitioner with talking therapies, they call themselves now. But on my course, I had people that had been teachers or teaching assistants. Like, just put yourself in environments where you learn to be around difference. You learn to be around different types of people, as well as thinking about kind of mental health needs.
Just to add as well, actually, Dr. On saying that just reminded me. So the course that he was on, the CBT training, and what he mentioned, PWP, which they have a children's version, which is CWP. You have to, if you do that, that is also funded, by the way, and then you work on a placement, and I'm pretty sure you're also on a salary for it. But once you do that and qualify, you can't actually apply for the doctorate straight after. So Ron was able to when he done his CBT training. But I think it's 2 years now that you have to work in it. And I mean, there's a whole debate about that, but yeah, you wouldn't be able to go straight in.
I guess the rationale around that was the fact that a lot of people using that role as a stepping board to then get into clinical psychology, which was then leaving gaps within that provision. So they've kind of basically said, we need people in these roles now for 2 years before they can even apply for the doctorate.
Wow.
I guess the issue was they introduced that whilst people were still on the course. It got techie.
Well, it's just something to hold in mind that if you were to go down that route, it will have a bit of a delay in being able to apply.
All right. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap up. But I did want to ask a question. We've got 3 questions that we ask all our guests. But before we get onto the 3, you mentioned something earlier about your approach to community, right? And you being more so around the whole we and not the I thing, right? What would you want? What's some of the main things that you guys want? Let's say 3 things, that you guys want the community, anyone who listens to you guys, hears about your work, to take from you guys, basically.
Well, I guess this is where I'm going to put us on the plug and the map. So our company that we've created is PTSD. Psychologists the streets deserve.
Okay, then.
Powerful, hopefully, but I guess again it was kind of no. But I guess that was born from the issues that we've experienced. I guess being within NHS services and actually working with lots of different kind of connecting agencies, realizing that there is a big gap here. It's kind of what I mentioned at the start, that I know black boys and black men, or anybody that's experiencing community violence. They do truly want support. One, they just don't know how to get it. And when they do tap into it, it's not helpful for them, based for various different reasons. So we've created something that we think can help individuals, but also the systems that surround them.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the dream is to be working with the family system around people, but also thinking systemically, macro system level.
Yeah.
How can we impact public policy and planning to really help politicians think about how their decisions trickle down to families, then that trickle down to young people ultimately. We've got lots of big ideas. Yeah. And I'll say the companies, I was going to say it's infancy. I think it's embryonic, man. We're like, I don't think it's even in infancy yet, but I'm just saying, expect big things from us is what I'm saying.
Amazing.
Yeah. What are you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the company, I think my mind changes depending on how I'm interpreting that question. So if it's for people we would directly work with, or if it's for like other psychologists, other staff, like things like that. But ultimately, to people we're directly working with, I would say, like, I think just what I was saying earlier, that nothing's your fault. Like, it's okay to feel how you might feel, or it's okay to not have those feelings equally and feel numb almost. And that change can happen when you're ready, and almost like trust the process. And when you're ready, there are people there that can relate to you, that want to relate to you, or if ultimately they can't, they want to understand your story and your narrative and how you want to tell it.
I love that, man. Can like how do people get to work with you? Do they have to go through the NHS to you? Can we go direct to you? Like, how does it work?
As in, do you mean
As
the
in
company?
Yeah, company.
I guess directly.
Yeah, I
Directly.
guess it would be directly.
Okay,
So
cool.
we're still, I said it's embryonic, we're still setting up socials.
Okay, cool.
But I guess the dream would be that people would be shouting us directly.
Okay.
But I guess what I would also say is be patient with us. There's just two of us.
Yeah.
I can imagine that and even now, lots of asks come in.
Yeah.
So we're having to kind of manage expectations and time actually and capacity.
Okay.
But just know that we won't leave you. Is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. All right, so the last 3 questions that we ask, tell us something that people are usually surprised to learn about you.
Sorry, before you answer that. So when you're ready to basically launch, you can come back and
Yes.
I love
Share.
that. I love that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
cool. Surprised to know?
Yes.
Ask the question again.
Tell us something that people are usually surprised to learn about you.
Wow.
I don't know if this. I don't know. Well, I would say because I've got 3 brothers. I'm the only girl, and I feel like that's where my mind went. And I feel like usually people find that surprising, but then they always like, oh yeah, that makes sense
makes
actually.
sense.
And I don't always know what people mean by that. I don't even question it. I'm like, I don't even know if I want to know. But I'd say maybe that. I would have probably said OCD, but I've already said that earlier.
How if you don't mind me asking, how serious is the OCD? Like, how does it manifest
I don't mind
itself?
at all. It's so basically I just find everything dirty. So like I won't use like cutlery like outside of my house. I would have to have takeaway everything. But what makes it OCD is because I will get an intrusive thought to be like that. I don't know, let's say I was in a cafe and they gave me a mug. I'd be like, no, that mug's not clean. Like I can't do it. And then if I was to really like think about those thoughts, and when I had therapy, I'm like funneling it down into like what the thought is that's bringing me so much disgust towards a cup or something, is that I might think that, oh gosh, like if it's dirty, I might get ill, something might happen to me. Although my initial thought is that, oh, it's dirty, I can't. So I struggle with that. And like, I also struggle, it's called check-in behaviours. So like I used to live alone in Feltham for a year, and oh my gosh, every time I had to leave to go to work, I had to check like that if I use my hob that I've turned it off, and I would just be worried that I've left it on, I'm going to start a fire and it's going to be my fault and people are going to get hurt. That is what my therapy helped with most, the check-in behaviours. But even earlier, like yesterday, I was checking my alarm bare times. I was like, please don't let me oversleep and I'm late. I mean, I was late anyway because there was an incident in Battersea. But it's that's kind of how it plays out. But it's more the cleanliness stuff that I struggle with more at the moment, not so much the checking.
All right, thanks for that. Yes,
Wow, I guess I've had time to think. I would say people are often intrigued about my hobbies. One of them is that I love going to a shooting range.
Oh, serious?
So there's airsoft place in Canada.
Okay.
I actually go to regularly as a way to kind of decompress.
Okay, then.
Actually interesting. Yeah. And I'm actually very good at it. Yeah, very good at it. Seriously, I'm on job.
All right,
but it's
then.
interesting that I kind of figured that out when I was invited to a conference in America, and obviously they have live ammo there. And I was like, wow, this is quite therapeutic. Yeah, so that often shocks people.
I thought you was going to say you figured it out on the roads.
I've done it.
imagine?
I was shook.
Nah, I actually find it quite, therapeutic.
All right, cool. What would you guys say is your biggest life lesson?
Getting kicked out of school doesn't matter. Your life ain't done.
I love that.
I like that.
Because I did not think I'd be able to be 3 degrees deep at that point.
Yeah. I like that.
Mine is no person is bigger than your mental health. And I say that because I've been around family, around friends who I have stuck with at the detriment of my mental health because they're family or friends.
Yeah.
And actually my lesson is nobody should be bigger than your own individual mental health.
Wow.
That's what I would say. It's heavy.
I think the next time we come, we have to get into that.
Fair.
The third question is basically a question asked by the previous guest. So this is what we do. We basically get people to ask questions and you guys answer it. And so you guys are going to leave a question for the next guest as well, right? So their question was, what makes you you? What makes what you're trying to do different from anybody else?
I love that. I feel like I just respond to questions quite quickly. Mine is the fact that I'm a South Londoner and I heavily identify with that identity.
Yeah.
But I guess it's not just about being, maybe it is, because I guess how I make sense of being a South Londoner is the fact that I'm from Ends, and that is about language, that's about culture, it's about identity. And how I bring that up in any type of environment I'm in, whether that's how I dress, whether that's how I'm articulating things, but also how I just create a presence. I think it's my South London identity.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd say similar. I think being a Londoner is definitely a massive part of my identity. I wanted to do my thesis on that, but my uni were like, maybe not. But yeah, I would say that. But I think as well, like, as I've grown older, a big part of what makes me is also my religion. I wasn't really in touch with it when I was young. I was born into Islam, so I didn't really know much at that age. And I think navigating uni, like my undergrad, brought me a bit closer to it. And I think it is a big part of who I am now. And I even love being able to like refer to it when I'm working with young people who are also Muslim and kind of leaning on like metaphors that make sense from Islam and being able to use that. But ultimately, like in general, I was trying to think like, what would my friends say? Or like, what would like anyone about me say? And I think I'm actually a massive open book. Like people can ask me whatever. And I think that is a big part of what makes me. Oh, actually, Nando's. I think Nando's makes that is what
You need to be sponsored by Nando's.
Listen,
Serious.
I kept Nando's going during COVID. Denmark kill Nando's. I paid their bills. Like Nando's is what makes me actually, I'd say.
All right, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure having you guys here. The chat, really loved the conversation, man. Bigging you guys up.
Is there a question you're supposed to leave for the next guest?
Oh my goodness. Yes, of course.
What should we ask? Do we have an idea of like what they do?
To be fair, we don't give hints. It just has to be hidden.
All right.
Yeah.
I think I like that though. Yeah.
What was the previous question, Emma?
What was the previous question?
That the previous guest asked them.
What makes you you?
All right, okay, then yeah. Let's leave one for the next one.
I'm thinking maybe if like you were watching your life as a movie, what might surprise you? I don't know.
Let's go with it. Why not? Yeah, let's go with
Unless
it.
you want to ask something different.
Let's go with it.
Would that be where they are right now? So basically, the end of the movie is where they are today, or
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think they can go through the entire lifespan, and if there's something that might surprise them when they were younger watching it now.
I'm gonna add a
Go
bit
on,
to that.
go on.
As psychologists, so I want that person to think about that in relation to their mental health. So something that has surprised them, if their life were a movie, something that has surprised them that impacted their mental health.
And I guess it doesn't that's not necessarily a negative thing.
Yeah,
Like,
100%. Yeah.
All right, beautiful. Once again, guys, you guys have been amazing, man. Really appreciate you guys coming through. Your Instagram and whatnot is on the screen, but do you mind saying it for those who are not watching?
Oh, that's my personal Instagram on the screen. Well, I have the psychology one that I've only just recently made, but it's literally amber.psychology.
Okay.
I'm at the accessible psychologist, but then with the PTSD one, is it at
PTSD London?
Yeah.
At PTSD London. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, people. Follow that page.
Yes, please.
And obviously, these guys are going to be back basically when you properly launching and everything. So, yeah, man. Again, appreciate you guys coming.
Thank you.
Been amazing, man.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
All right, Brent, let's get into the reaction, please. Okay.
I'm going to work.
No, to be fair, I'm going Brixton for that. Yeah.
All right, people, welcome to the reaction where we give you the sports news. Basically, yesterday, Brent, are you a bit disheartened by the fact that PSG beat Aston Villa the way they did?
Why?
Actually, what am I talking about?
Why would it be decided?
That's exactly what you wanted.
That's exactly what I wanted.
But is the nature in which they beat them a bit troubling for you? 3-1?
No, it's no trouble. No trouble.
Yeah? Okay,
No.
okay.
More of the same next leg.
All right, then. So, obviously, guys, PSG beat Aston Villa at home 3-1. Yeah, man, they scored a 3-1 victory over Aston Villa in the first leg. Morgan Rogers gave Aston Villa a surprising early lead. But, yeah, man, I don't know these players. Is it Doué, Brent?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he equalised with a stunning curler before half-time. Another guy whose name I cannot pronounce, but I'm going to try. Kvarat Kvaratskhelia, right?
Nailed it.
Thank you. He extended PSG's lead with a powerful shot in the second half, and Mendes added the late third goal as well. Despite Aston Villa's early goal and some counter-attacking opportunities, PSG dominated possession and shots on goal. PSG now holds a commanding 2-goal advantage heading into the second leg at Villa Park, but Aston Villa, their manager, Emery, remains optimistic about their chances. Also, as well, Barcelona played Borussia Dortmund. They beat them 4-0, man. So it looks like that's going to be a straightforward entrance into the semi-finals. Today, there's some games as well. The UEFA Europa League.
Thank you very much.
Lazio's playing against Bodo Glimt. Today, Lyon's playing Man United as well. Tottenham's playing Frankfurt. And Rangers are playing Athletic Bilbao. So, yeah, man, that's something to look forward to. Let's see if Man United can do something good. Because, yeah, it's been terrible for them in the Premier League. But that is pretty much it for the reaction. But let's get into the wrap-up. Say so. Huh? People, it's been amazing. Thank you very much. We'll be back tomorrow, 8 o'clock, man. Stay blessed.
Later.
Peace.